Hey everyone, it's Ryder from Skip. The largest ever pandemic-related fraud was just announced, nearly $250 million. It's this big number right behind me. I'm going to share exactly how this happened. You know, chances are good you're related to some pandemic relief, whether it's as an individual or as a small business owner. So if that's the case, listen up. I'm going to explain how this happened and why this is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to these types of indictments. I expect a lot more, and some of these are certainly going to affect you. So let me explain what happened. But first, as always, thanks for subscribing, turning on alerts. And if you find this valuable, feel free to hit the like button. Basically, $240 million was meant to provide food for children in after-school programs or at home or summer programs, and it didn't happen. A huge fraud case, and it reaches some high levels. New York Times did a long piece on this today. They even talk about the SBA and what this means for the cases the SBA is investigating. But let me start at the top. Justice Department charges 47 in brazen pandemic aid fraud in Minnesota. Defendants were charged with stealing $240 million intended to feed children. It's a crazy story. The Minnesota operation, prosecutors said, involved faked receipts for 125 million meals. At times, it was especially bold. One accused conspirator told the government he had fed 5,000 children a day in a second-story apartment. Other defendants in the case seemed to put minimal effort into disguising what they were doing, using the website List of Random Names to create a fake list of children they could charge for feeding, then giving them random ages. They used a number-generating program to produce ages for the children they were supposedly feeding. So let me explain how this program worked, but just so you know, this is from the Department of Education. There were dozens of pandemic-related relief programs to help children, to help individuals, to help small businesses. As you know, I've been covering the small business programs ad nauseum for the past few years. The good, the bad, and the ugly, including this $3.7 billion in EIDL funds awarded to potentially ineligible recipients. These are the EIDL grants. Same with the EIDL loans, same with the PPP loans. There's been a few hundred indictments so far related to these SBA programs. And yes, I believe that is just the tip of the iceberg. You know, a month ago, I talked about the new law, which says that the SBA can now investigate for 10 years. 10 years is the statute of limitations for EIDL-related enforcement. So these investigations will go on for small businesses, individuals, especially in cases of extreme fraud, which is what happened here. Here's basically how it works. The federal government had programs to provide food for children after school and summer camps. These were funneled through the state governments. So the feds gave money to Minnesota in this case. And here's the rub, Feeding Our Future, what I believe was a well-known organization in Minnesota, was supposedly supposed to be the watchdog sponsor for these programs. Minnesota trusted Feeding Our Future to then pick the food distribution organizations, nonprofits, companies that would supposedly give out food to children. That didn't happen. In many cases, no food ever reached children. And the rub is that Feeding Our Future had an incentive to look away because they would receive 10 to 15% of the money they approved for all of these allegedly scammy food distribution organizations, individuals. Here's the Feeding Our Future website. Here is Amy Bach, who's in charge of Feeding Our Future. A photo of her as she was brought in and formally charged. But here's the thing, the Times first reported on this back in March of this year. FBI sees massive fraud in groups, food programs for needy children. Here's the article back in March 8, 2022. And this was just the tip of the iceberg, saying the state of Minnesota channeled $3.2 million in federal food aid to this one nonprofit organization, setting up what was described as an enormous childcare operation in Northeast Minneapolis that could provide 5,000 diners each weeknight. Here's a quote from back in March. Almost none of this money was used to feed children. Instead, conspirators misappropriated the money and used it to purchase real estate, cars, and other items. And just today, the 47 indictments and charges came through, revealing nearly $250 million of fraud. And again, this is just one piece of the pandemic relief program. The Labor Department's Inspector General has opened 39,000 investigations at the SBA. A shout out to the SBA. 50 agents have been sorting through 2 million potentially fraudulent loan applications. 2 million. And while the sheer volume of cases all but ensures that some cases will go unaddressed, even if you have 10 years to investigate 2 million potential cases, they're certainly going to go after the large ones first and maybe find some connections. Today's news in Minnesota and the size of this show a strong signal that the Justice Department is moving aggressively on others. But here's a piece about the indictments I want you to understand. Like I just mentioned, this money was spent on real estate in the US, Kenya, Turkey, as well as on cars and luxury goods. The Justice Department is seeking to seize many of those purchases. Prosecutors said many defendants had been arrested or turned themselves in. They also said some had left the country, but they didn't say how many have escaped or potentially escaped justice. The indictments are accusations, and many of those who were charged have said they did nothing wrong. But the bottom line here is about oversight and the speed to get out help and get out money. That's why we're going to see many, many more of these cases in the coming months and years. There's no doubt about it. As funding went up, oversight went down. State officials, for instance, no longer could check on the feeding sites in person. They had to trust, again, the sponsor, which in this case was Feeding Our Future. Of course, I would love to hear what you think about this, as an individual, as an entrepreneur or small business owner. Programs like this, small business programs, what do you think about the extent of this fraud and how are you feeling about it? Many of you watching have looked up your EIDL loans and it grants. If you Google EIDL recipients, Skip is the first search result. And some of you have been surprised. You've seen a loan under your name that you never took out, and someone potentially stole your identity. As always, be careful, especially in the videos here. There's so many scammers also trying to take advantage of folks. In the comments, people impersonating Skip. Never Venmo, send gift cards or otherwise to people you don't know personally. If you ever utilize Skip's services or memberships, we'll only ask you to book on our website or over the phone with a publicly listed number for Skip. So drop in your comments what you think about this big news today. There's also a lot of criticism on the side of the government for not moving fast enough. Like I've illustrated, this 6-month process finally revealed this massive alleged fraud, the largest fraud we've seen via the pandemic-related programs. Here's a list of some of the recent investigations that have been reported publicly, and this is probably just a fraction. That's today's quick update. Thanks for subscribing and liking this video and being a part of the Skip community. We've got a lot more funding news, grant news, and some special surprises coming up for small business owners and entrepreneurs. Can't wait to share them with you. Most importantly, stay well, stay healthy, and I'll see you tomorrow.